NFL postseason. The divisional round of the playoffs take place this weekend. In the NFC, the number one seed Green Bay Packers take on the 49ers, while Tom Brady's defending champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are up against the LA Rams, while in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs, looking for a third straight visit to the Super Bowl, they play the in-form team in football right now, the Buffalo Bills, while the top-seeded Titans welcome the Cincinnati Bengals to Tennessee. To discuss all of this, I am joined by, well, one of the most familiar faces to fans of American football in this part of the world. Sky Sports NFL analyst Jeff Reinebold is with us. How are you keeping, Jeff?
I'm keeping really well, man. How are things on the Emerald Isle?
I was sitting down on my couch last Sunday evening and Neil Reynolds came on. He said, "We're here with you for the next 11 hours. You boys are the hardest working in showbiz."
Well, I tell you what, when it's playoff time, just like the players, sometimes you got to play a little hurt, you got to play a little tired.
You got through it though, and it was quite the weekend as well, and it set it up really nicely for the divisional round of the playoffs this weekend. We might just go through it. Well, before we even go through it game by game, the one thing that is clear from listening to various podcasts and all the analysts during the week is there's a sense that this is wide open, even still at the last 8.
Yeah, because it's been such an unbelievably unpredictable year in the National Football League. Normally there's a kingpin going into the playoffs that you can say, well, if they don't screw it up, they're going to be the team to beat. But I just really can't find one this year because every team that's in the playoffs right now, even the 1 seeds, you look at Tennessee, they lose the Jets, and then on the other hand, you got the Packers who, at times have struggled. And so, it's been such a crazy year. The injuries, the COVID situation again, inconsistency at quarterback, just a lot of factors have played into this, and there is no clear cut, favorite in my mind. As a matter of fact, Vegas has made a lot of money this year because you just can't pick. I mean, it defies logic.
So should we not just keep it simple and always bet on Tom Brady?
Well, that's one way to go, and if you went that way, you'd be right a lot of times. I know that. I think I saw it today. This was phenomenal. We were filming the NFL Overtime show at Sky, and he has 40-some playoff appearances. And I'm like, what? When I saw the statistic, and I went, it is unbelievable. Really, that's unbelievable what he has been able to do in a career that has, just been – and to do it at the high level that he's doing it late in his career. This year, he's been as good as he's ever been. And at whatever year, I don't know. I don't even know how old he is. 44. I mean, that's just defies description, really.
This weekend, then, so the Buccaneers are number 2 seeds. They're playing the LA Rams. On paper, the Rams a better, healthier team. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. absolutely flying at the moment. Yet still, you look at Matt Stafford, 13-year veteran, and you compare him with Tom Brady, and again, you always just feel that Brady's going to be able to produce it, where there are probably still some question marks, even still, on Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing that's unfair, but again, if you, I tell my players this all the time: if you want fair, don't go into football. Matthew Stafford is a great player, but like other quarterbacks, like every other quarterback, you're measured as a quarterback in the number of Super Bowls you produce. He hadn't even produced a playoff win until last week. So I think that until he makes a deep run into the playoffs and hopefully wins the Super Bowl, if you're a Rams fan, then his legacy will be secured. The same thing's true, as crazy as this sounds. Aaron Rodgers has been a multiple-time MVP. He's done so much in this league, but he's only won 1 Super Bowl. And, Brett Favre, Bart Starr, that's what you're measured against. And those are multiple Super Bowl winners. And, until he wins another one, he's not going to measure up. Dan Marino might be one of the greatest that ever threw a pass in the league. He never won a Super Bowl, and that's always going to haunt him when it comes to his legacy.
Like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, and we're still watching Tom Brady throwing touchdown passes to Gronk. When you look at Brady now, if you were to compare Brady in 2022 to Brady 10, 12 years ago, how has his game changed?
Oh, he's so much in better physical condition. Now that goes against the grain because at 44 years old, most guys' bodies have broken down long before, right? He's a unique guy though, and I think the biggest thing, Nathan, when you talk about Brady, the thing that people don't talk about that they probably should, because it's the thing that drives the rest of the engine, is his competitive nature, his desire to compete, his love of winning has never waned. And that's the usual. Everybody talks about your legs are the first thing to go. That's not been my experience in pro football. What I see go is the fire that young athletes feel to be champions and to be, to get that next contract or whatever their motivation is, right? Because once they've gotten there, then the tendency is to relax. He's gotten to the pinnacle 6 times, and there's no sign of him slowing down, no sign of him relaxing, no sign of him taking extra days off. The will to prepare, the off season, to do the work, to study, all of the things that it takes that the fans never see, that will usually is the first thing that leaves an athlete, not his legs, but that will to go into the weight room, to not have a cake and ice cream with my kids on their birthday because it's not it's not in my diet. All that stuff that's so unusual about high level competitors. He's been able to hold on to that over a 20-year career.
That fire you talk about, Aaron Rodgers is 6 years younger at 38 than Tom Brady. Is the fire still in Aaron Rodgers?
I think so, because you look at him and you see what he enjoys. He enjoys winning. He enjoys making the great throw. He enjoys the pressure of the moment, right? That whole thing. And so, the thing that separates high-level athletes from other athletes, right? It's usually not the measurables, the 40 time, how much they can bench press, how high they can jump, their height, their weight, any of that stuff. In some cases it is, right? But in general, if you look at the whole spectrum of professional athletes, and I'm talking about football players here, there are others who are just as fast, just as strong, just as big, whatever it is. But there's something else in the hyper-competitive great ones. They are driven beyond what other people can, sometimes even understand. Like when you talk about Brady and you talk about his diet and his off-season program and how meticulous he is with all that. Well, Aaron Rodgers is the same way. Now, his personality is different and he projects differently and all those other things. But don't think for a second that he is not wired extremely tightly when it comes to his football.
Was Tom Brady able to create his own COVID vaccine the same way that Aaron Rodgers was?
I can't speak to that.
He's good, but he's not that good.
I mean, that, like I said, they're wired differently, man. They project. I'm sorry, they project differently. They're wired the same, but they project differently. Even though they're both from the northern part of California, they are both very, very different in their personalities.
The last postseason was dominated by Rodgers, and was he going to stay? Did he want to stay? Did the Packers want him to stay? What's the love like for Aaron Rodgers around the Packers at the moment?
My thing is, unless he's determined to go, why would the Packers even think about letting him go? I understand you drafted Love a few years ago to be the replacement. That kid is not anywhere near Aaron Rodgers' level right now.
So why were all the questions there then?
Because I think there's a narrative that always is going to surround Aaron Rodgers because he is a different guy, and He's not afraid to say what he thinks. He is much more unguarded in the media, if you will, than Brady is. And then on top of it, in this day and age, in this free agency world, in this world of, players changing teams to create super teams so that they can win championships together, which was really started by the NBA. All of us are going to speculate on those things during the off season. And I think that, it's tougher. People always ask me about what's like coaching in today's world. It's different, and it's tougher in some ways than it has been before. But I'll tell you what, it's got to be tougher as a player too, because the 24/7, 56 weeks a year, 365 day a year focus, and everybody's got a podcast, everybody's got the internet, everybody's got a Twitter account, and it's just non-stop speculation and scrutiny. And that's one of the reasons why we love the NFL as much as we love it.
The 49ers have sort of been kryptonite to Aaron Rodgers in the postseason. 3 matches, 3 defeats in the playoff. He's still only been to 1 Super Bowl. In terms of when we're talking, Matt Stafford is a great quarterback, but in terms of legacy, you mentioned it is about Super Bowls. How important is it for him to get back there again in terms of been talking about him in 10, 20, 30 years' time?
I think there's a couple things that when you give me the question that way, how important is it to him? I can only speculate because I'm not him. Now, as a member of the media or as a member of the football community or however you want to describe it, I think it's really important to him because, you're, like I say, rightly or wrongly, we're all part of the same environment, same world. We judge our quarterbacks by what they do in the postseason. And so until it's what's interesting to me, Nathan, is what do they call Green Bay, right? They don't call it the ice box. They don't call it that little town in Wisconsin. They call it Title Town, right? And if you're in Title Town, well, that's telling me that winning championships is pretty important around here. And he's only won 1, right? Now, Bart Starr won 2. Favre, I don't know. I think he won 2 or 3. But I'm telling you, that's what he's up against when he's measured as a quarterback. They don't measure him against Don Majkowski or, any of the other quarterbacks that, even the good ones that have been through Green Bay. They measure him against what Bart Starr did and what Brett Favre did.
Titletown is also a very cold town. They're expecting it to be maybe minus 12 this weekend. Is that a factor in these games?
I don't know how much a factor cold is, right? Unless it just gets down to where it's like the Ice Bowl game that the Cowboys and the Packers played, I think in 1968. That was inhumanly cold because now the fields are all much better taken care of. There's heaters underneath the field. The fields are covered. You don't have the problems with the field, right? What is more difficult than anything else is wind, right? Wind and rain, and wind being the worst. Now, my understanding is it's not supposed to be windy in Lambeau Field that day. Understand that the Packers live in that climate. Now, they don't practice in it because they have an indoor facility, but they live in that climate. So it's not a shock to them. When you're a visiting team and you're the San Francisco 49ers, you come from Northern California where it's probably, 55 degrees, 60 degrees most days this time of year. And you're going to get on an airplane and you're going to land 3 hours later in Wisconsin, and it's going to be, 3 degrees, right? It is a shock to your system. And the way that teams travel, you're responsible to be in the visiting city 24 hours before the game, right? Well, 24 hours, your body is not going to get, especially if you're laying around a hotel room, your body is not going to get used to that cold. So the cold is more of a factor to the visiting team than it is the home team.
Looking at the AFC then, so Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, looking to stay on track for a third successive Super Bowl appearance. They face the Buffalo Bills, who are the informed team in football, scored 7 touchdowns against the Patriots last weekend. The perfect game. Every time they got the ball, they scored a touchdown. Can you just put that into context and to how great an achievement it is?
Well, we've seen, I don't know how many thousands of NFL games, and I don't recall a single one where you scored a touchdown on every drive until you kneeled down to win the game, right? I can't recall an NFL game that way. And then to do it in the playoffs is even more incredible. And then factor into it that's against the number 2 scoring defense in the National Football League, right? And Bill Belichick, who prepares and is prepared for more playoff games than anybody in the history of football. So when you put it in that context, it's pretty incredible. I talked to Steve Tasker, who is an all-time great Buffalo Bill and Hall of Fame nominee and all of this. And Tasker has been, since he retired, he's been living and working in Buffalo. He does the local radio show and Bills radio and television. He's around the team. He knows the team. He knows the history of the team. And I said, Steve, what was the most amazing thing about seeing that? And I thought he'd say Josh Allen's 5 touchdown passes or, any of the other things that he did. He said, what was most incredible to me was that the entire game, for the entire football game, on third down, the Buffalo Bills never faced a down and distance longer than 3rd and 4. And that is truly amazing.
A lot of the analysis afterwards was obviously if Josh Allen can play like that again, ain't nobody going to be able to stop the Bills. But it's postseason, it's playoffs. It ain't as straightforward as that. From what you've seen of Josh Allen through the years, that consistency to do it week after week in a postseason, is that there?
We'll see. It hasn't been, but this is a kid that, I don't know if Brian Daboll maybe gets enough credit because when he was drafted by the Bills out of Wyoming, I went back and I looked at him because, I had done a review of him for the draft for Sky, and I thought that he was a big arm guy, showed athletic ability. He played at Wyoming where you don't play against great defensive backs. So he was able to squeeze some throws in that, I didn't know if he was going to be able to make at the next level, but he had a huge arm and he was a great competitor. But you also saw he was wildly erratic. And then I went back and said, okay, let's see if there's a pattern here. And I went to his junior college tape, right? Because he wasn't recruited out of high school, and he only had one Division I offer when he came out of junior college, and that was Wyoming. And nobody goes to Wyoming unless they have to, right? And then I checked his junior college stats, and then I checked his high school stats, all the way back to the first varsity pass he threw in high school. So this is a pretty extensive study. And the guy had never in a season passed for 60% completions. Right? And 60% is the floor when you consider accuracy of a passer. And I thought to myself, if he hasn't done it in high school, he hasn't done it in junior college, he hasn't done it at Wyoming, how in the hell is he going to do it at the Buffalo Bills in the National Football League where the game is so fast and the DBs are so athletic and the linebackers can close so well? How's he going to be able to translate that into success as a passer at the highest level? And you look at him now and, you see him completing about 68% of his passes.
Yeah.
And I mean,
how's he done it?
Fun. Well, coaching, number one, right? They've done a great job with him at Buffalo. The other thing is he has a great desire to be the face of that franchise in the right way. And when I say that, some guys want to do work on social media and Twitter to be the face of the franchise. Josh Allen went away and got in a weight room and got with the quarterback coach and did the work that's not fun, the work that you never see, to change his mechanics and change his foot platforms and understand the game better and do all of those things to become the face of the franchise. And I give him great credit. And Brian Daboll and that staff deserve far more credit than they get for his development.
Just before we let you go, Jeff, the first game of the weekend actually is the Bengals at the Titans. So the Bengals win over the Raiders last weekend was their first playoff win in 31 years. How in the great equality of the American sports system with the draft system does that happen? How do you go 3 decades without a playoff win?
Well, I think there's a couple factors right off the top. First of all, you play in an extremely good division because you're playing in a division that has the Baltimore Ravens and it has the Pittsburgh Steelers. So rarely do 3 teams ever get to the playoffs. Now, once in a while it happens, but not very often. Because usually when you're in the division like that, they cannibalize one or the other, right? Now, Cleveland's been in there with them too, but they always were kind of like knocking on the door, but not close. I mean, Marvin Lewis got them to the playoffs a number of times, but they just weren't good enough to get over the hump. Part of that was quarterback play, because Andy Dalton is a serviceable NFL quarterback, not a great NFL quarterback. Last playoff game they won, if I'm not mistaken, Boomer Esiason was the quarterback, and he was a great NFL quarterback for his time, right? So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing that has always haunted the Bengals is their lack of wanting to spend money. And, you know, their scouting staff was always the smallest in the National Football League. I have a friend, Jim McNally, who coached there for 25 years. And while most other coaches would get a couple weeks off of vacation once the season's over, they didn't in Cincinnati, because Cincinnati had one pro scout. And so the scouts were the coaches during the off season. So the season would end, and rather than go on vacation with his wife for a couple weeks and lay on the beach, he got a can of film put on his desk, and they said, okay, Jim, these are the best rated linemen by Blesto, which is Blesto is a service that every NFL team uses to grade prospects. And these were the best graded guys. Now you go through and evaluate them for the draft, right? So they weren't spending money, and then they weren't, you know, they lost every time. It seemed like every time the Bengals had good players, they would lose them because they wouldn't pay them. That has started to change.
Right.
Their scouting department has now been upgraded. They've done a better job of spending money in smart, you know, using it wisely. And, you know, you got to give Zach Taylor some credit too. He's had he's done a good job turning a franchise.
So basically, after decades of systemically bad management, they're finally starting to get it together and getting their reward as well. We're out of time, unfortunately. Can you give us your 4 picks for the weekend, Jeff?
I think, I think the Titans will beat Cincinnati. Although Cincinnati's scary because they can score. But I watched a lot of tape today on Tennessee. And because Tennessee's not a team that, it's not a big market team, so you don't see a lot of them. Tennessee has really gotten better on defense. And with the King back, I think that's, I think they just got too many players. But again, you're talking about a hot young quarterback. Burrow is the hottest quarterback in the league right now. But I still got to take the Titans. The Tampa Bay Rams game, Wirfs is a big key. He's got to be healthy. Jensen's got to be healthy. Right now, I would say if the Rams coach the game well, they will win. And what I mean by coach the game well, right now, Tampa is beat up. Mike Evans is the only true receiver threat they have, right? So if the Rams are willing to take Jalen Ramsey, and put him on Evans and play +1 around him or blitz, then I think they got a chance. But if they play zone and they get, they play soft, Brady will rip them because he's so good against the zone. Fournette is a big key, but they got to be able to keep Brady on his feet. If not, the Rams will win the game. San Francisco and Green Bay, I always, if it's a close game, there's two things that matter in playoff football. And, turnovers are big, big, big. But the other thing is play your quarterback. And in that game, I think, I think Jimmy G gets a lot of hate that he doesn't deserve, but Aaron Rodgers is one of the best in the game. So I would give the Packers, the nod there. And then Buffalo and Kansas City, like I said, when I talked to Tasker last week, I said, what's the mood around that football team? Because he's been there forever and he knows all the guys personally. And, that he's an ex-player, so they feel comfortable talking to him. He said, Jeff, I've never seen a football team more ready to get in the ring and take a swing at it. So I like the sound of that if I'm a Bills fan.
All right. Jeff, all the games live on Sky Sports over the weekend. We look forward to it. Thanks a lot for joining us.
My pleasure, fellas. Thank you. And you guys take care. Keep doing a great job.
You too. Thanks a million.